Right, so who's written a plugin before? Who's done it for just themselves, or who's done it to actually post on the WordPress repo? Few? Cool. All right, the plugin I wrote, and let's make sure where this is, was actually just a little jQuery slider that I thought was kind of fun, and oh, come on. All it does is on your form, it replaces the submit button with your little slider here. After you write your comments, you slide past 60%, and it submits the form. Since I didn't fill it out, there's an error. But I proposed that way as a CAPTCHA method to stop spam, because the actual click and drag event is almost, well, it's not impossible, but it's really difficult to emulate through a script. And a friend of mine actually, at the time when I showed this to him, he was the lead designer for PhotoBucket, and he said that he showed it to him, and they liked it so much they actually downloaded my code and started working it into what they're doing for redesign. So what I have probably won't actually be there, but they're doing something similar to that, where they just kind of do a click and drag event to prevent spam and everything else. So let's see, let me pull up my slides now. All right. Come on. Now, where is the play? So we're going to be doing this on WordPress plugins, if you haven't already guessed. Oh, come on. My name is Brian Rogers. I go by the handle Captain Brogers. I got that when I was working at Bluehost. And pretty much everywhere I've gone, that is always available for me. So on Twitter, GitHub, Forest, I'm just Captain Brogers. And I promised I'd put this in my slides to show a few people. I was up at the Living Planet Aquarium with my kids and took a picture on there. My wife did, and so I photoshopped it, put the Master Sword in, and put helmets on me and my kids. So, and this is a plugin. I don't know why I put that in there, but I did. What we're going to learn is how to add style sheets properly. The way George was talking about using the registering and enqueuing those, as well as JavaScript. Allowing the user to set options in an option page and then pass those parameters to JavaScripts. So, and on WordPress, that is the short URL to my plugin, and on GitHub, that's also the code. And like I said, I was having some trouble with getting these to work, and I think I've kind of figured it out, so I may make a few edits as we go. But if you want to follow along, I'll just be walking you through my code and showing you what I did. So, let's see. Nope, that's not working. All right, then. All right, the main PHP file, yes, I use Sublime Text too. I think it's pretty cool as well, so I'll plug that one as well. Whenever you write a plugin, you have to start out by specifying certain types or certain comments in your plugin file. Mostly these denote who you are, your website if you have one, the name, the version, who wrote it, and the licensing version. So you can see those up at the top. I think the style sheets for themes also have to do the same thing. And then just to be nice, I put in pretty much a quick blurb about the GPL version 3. I tried to comment these as best I could, so hopefully it'll explain what's going on and what's going through, so we don't have to do too much of stopping in questions. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask me. The first thing you need to do is add an action. These are hooks that tell WordPress at what point to execute your given function. And it only has it has 3 parameters that you can specify. Your first one is what you're going to do, the hook of when you want it to actually run. There is init, which is your main one, admin menu, admin init, run when the WP head function is called. You can't always guarantee that that will actually be in your theme, but if you're developing a plugin, or developing a theme with your plugin, you can kind of work around those things and guarantee where it will go. I chose the hook-in WP and Q script. So when WordPress begins its initial rendering, starts loading all of its JavaScripts, say when it's trying to determine if you're logged in, and that user bar that pops up on the top on the basic 2011 theme, it will actually run what I called WPSC My Files. The WPSC is a common practice to use for kind of a naming convention so that you can determine these are my functions and you won't have collisions with other people's functions, because a lot of people may tend to use the same names. So prepending or appending your function name with a little slug will help you along with that method. So here is that function. Now I've told WordPress that my script requires jQuery and then the jQuery slider, but you have to load them in order of the core and then the slider, and that way you don't have to get all 300 kilobytes of jQuery UI. You can actually use WordPress and offload the work to them. They will have extracted just the core functions and the slider functions, so I can cut my payload in half or more, and it's pretty easy to get just what you need and just what you want then. And then I register my script that I have as an external file. I give it a little slug name to actually, or an ID, so that I can reference it later. The plugin URL is a built-in function for actually telling WordPress, go to the plugins folder already, so you don't have to specify a full path. They don't ever use the trailing slash in those functions and what they return, so you do have to remember to include that initial /, otherwise your scripts will break. And the file actually is a second parameter that you can use to tell it the same folder that I'm in is where this file will be. So it's a really nice way to target the folder that you're in and work from there, so you don't have to determine the folder structures and how the hierarchy is and where it actually is and go searching for it. You can let WordPress do all the work. The third argument or parameter is actually a dependencies. This is an optional thing. You do not actually have to specify this. However, it does help with plugin development and others understanding what is required, and helps with WordPress to know what it has to load and kind of helps make sense of errors. So I just listed the 3 scripts I already enqueued. I specified the version of my script. And then false is a last parameter, which is also optional, of whether or not to put it in the footer of your page. So if you specify true, it will actually offload all the scripts at the bottom. And then I did the enqueue script. So after I've registered it, I tell WordPress to load it. And you can see a similar thing happened with my style sheets down here. And then if I go back to... come on, where is it? Here, and who's got the force? That is not working the way I wanted. Okay. You can actually see in my source code, I've got jQueries already loaded. Also loads the core, the slider, and my CAPTCHA, all in the same one. If you were to actually, like I said, put it in the footer, it would go all the way down here in the bottom in this mess. So, let's see. Now, where was I? Is there any questions so far on how this works and how it hooks in, or anything at all? It's kind of quiet. So continuing on, this is just the chain of events as it goes through. The admin menu and the settings page. These are where we tell WordPress how to add what we need into the admin section so that it can actually allow the users to set options and eventually pass those options on. In the admin menu, it's one simple function, really nice, just options pages. The options page will actually add a submenu item to the settings in your admin panel. Let's see if I can load it. There it is. All right, that's your whole options. So underneath settings, it just added a nice little WP slider CAPTCHA. 2 little forms. I'll show you how to render these in a minute. And the nice thing is they've made it really simple with what's called the the settings API. They introduced it in, I believe, WordPress 2.8, and it allows you to pass in just a few parameters, and it actually builds out the entire form for you. In here, it does a lot of things as far as adding additional information that WordPress needs, allowing for additional markup for those that need accessibility, those of have diminished sight or are blind. It allows text readers to read the page, read the content, and give them the information in a easy to digest format, so someone who may have trouble seeing is not going to have a hard time using your plugin. So let's get back to that, and I'll close, if I can close that. Come on. There it goes. So building these three things out is actually rather simple. Come on. Okay. There we go. It's now down in this section, this long list of functions, which I tried to space out so they're easier to see. When WordPress sets up the admin or the options pages in your admin section, it will actually group options based on how they are related. So if you have a few options that refer to one element and a few options that refer to a different element, you will want to set them up in different sections. However, since mine only refer to one element on the page, they're just one group together in one section. You provide it with a unique identifier. You actually give it a title. You have a callback function, and then this is a nice little slug of which page to add it to. And since that one was specified up here in the options page, where you actually set what that's going to be, this tells WordPress to add this options section to that page. Very much the same method as in queuing and registering the scripts. You just register your settings based off what group, unique identifier, and a callback function to render it out. And then once again, same thing with settings. You provide it with an ID, a little label to show the callback function, what group and what page. And then down here are my callback functions that all you have to specify is your input field. And when you specify it, a lot of times you have to specify the value for it. It's not necessary, but it is very, very helpful. You just call the get option with the ID, and then the second parameter is actually default if nothing is in that field. So it's a nice way to not really sanitize, but make sure that even if the user doesn't enter everything, you have a way of helping them along to make sure things will work. And the last thing I'll show you really quick was, unfortunately, this was part of the problem, and this is something I could probably edit and go back to use. There is a function called WP localize script, and the only three parameters are, let's see, the slug of the script that you're going to pass it to, the object name you want to have seen in that JavaScript, and then what data you're going to pass to it. What WordPress does is actually takes the code and serializes it as a JSON object so that in the JavaScript, when you actually go to it, you can call just that object and the parameter, and it will spit back out the information. So it's a real nice way to let the user specify something in the options page and let WordPress handle all the work of getting it to your JavaScript so they do have some method and control over what goes on. So, and that is pretty much it. They're really simple. Plugins are really simple to write, really nice and easy. And then setting up the last of the form is you tell it what fields, what page, and tell it to put in a submit button. It takes care of the rest of the work, and everything works out. So, how am I on time?
Well, you have plenty of time.
Plenty of time? Not what I wanted to hear, but at least everyone's laughing now. So just doing that was pretty simple, pretty easy. I think the first time I did it, I did not include an options page. And I'm sure George would be mad at me, but it only took me about 20 minutes to write. I didn't have any settings at all. It was just simply assuming they wanted the submit button to be overwritten, the threshold would be at 60%, and everything would submit when you slide past it. And that was it. Took me, like I said, all of 20 minutes. It was really simple, really basic. And when you go to actually submit your plugin to the WordPress repository, let's see if I can get this out of... sorry, that was another one that I was doing. Let me pull it up really quick. They were actually really good about getting back to me on my plugin. I think within 10 minutes I had an email saying that my plugin had been received and it was in queue for review. And I think it was less than an hour after that I actually got the email that had my information as far as submitting my plugin through SVN into their repository and seeing it up. And it was actually felt really nice for me. I thought it was a lot of fun to do and actually see my code being used by other people. I didn't have a lot of people download it, but it really felt nice to think that 300 other people at least thought I was worth it. And I think it's just codex.wordpress.org, and then it's plugin submission and promotion. We'll bring you to this nice little page. And after you have everything plugged in, it's, let's see, those are all the announcement sites. It has a lot of links to the plugin directory. Let's see. Plugin submission page right there. All you have to do after you log in is it'll have a nice little form. You go through it, you attach your code as a zip file through this form, upload it, and like I said, it was actually pretty easy to do and worked out really well. And that's honestly it. I didn't think it would take this fast to get through. So please, any questions at all? Oh, sure. Let's see. I think I have it on this page. We'll go ahead and log out so it'll be easier to show you. And I don't own WP.com. I have a local script running. Or I've hacked my host file, so here it is. Yeah, I do that, I know. So nice down here at the bottom, and just click and drag, and it does it. And that's it. And after it submits that, I think now if I log back in, it will... Hopefully, though knowing my luck this week, it will probably break. Let's see. Let's see, 1 comment. So that's it, approve, and then when I view the sites, go there. That's it. That's all it took. And like I said, I wanted to keep this really simple. That's why I used my little slider plugin, even though I know a lot of people frown on jQuery UI because of how bloated and really, what's the word that I'm thinking of? It's not really targeted in its method. It has a lot of cross-browser compatibility issues that it has to cover, so it gets really, really overdone at times. But I thought this was a nice little thing. And you could even go as far as in the options page to set where you can have them select their own CSS file to have all their styling so they can customize this for their own theme. I think I only did 2 real styles, and I extracted out the CSS personally myself for this, and that was that style sheet that I loaded was the 4 or 5 rules. to have this work. So there was another question over here? No? Awesome. And I go until 3:40, right?
Yeah. Have you gotten any feedback on whether it's confusing? 320.
3:20, thank you. I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Have you had any feedback on whether it confuses users?
I had only one person rate my comment, and it was 5 stars. And that was it. Yes?
So, Chris or Patrick may have talked about this earlier, but is there a plugin, ironically, that will evaluate your plugin for consistency or best practices for submission to WordPress?
Not that I have found. The only thing that I've really, and I haven't really searched too hard, so maybe there is, that would actually be really, really helpful. Every time I went into the WordPress...
I'm writing that, by the way, so don't anybody know.
Okay. Quick, someone release it, like...
I think they'd like to see WordPress coding standards used in your plugin.
Yes, and one of the revisions that I made is I was not using the settings API in my first version of the plugin, so that was the biggest piece of advice I got from the WordPress developers was please use the settings API. It helps keep a consistent format through the options page. But anyway, to answer his question, the closest thing I found to a plugin that actually helped was kind of a boilerplate plugin, but I felt like it had a lot of unnecessary code. I think it had one function that checked to make sure you were running the latest version of WordPress before activating your plugin, which I can understand the intention of it, but at the same time, it's if the user isn't updating that fast, odds are they're going to have a reason not to update. They're going to have a custom build. They will be manually updating and patching themselves. So I didn't like the idea of pretty much forcing the user to have to go in and edit my code, and I'm relying on them being smart enough to figure out whether or not they're on the latest version. So anyway.
Just a comment. There's another WordCamp presentation by a guy named Daniel Bachhuber, who's one of the, he's on the WordPress VIP team, and it's called the Zen of WordPress development. And he kind of talks just about like WordPress development standards and like kind of how to do things the WordPress way, I guess. And I think that's a pretty valuable thing if you're interested in, I guess, being a better developer.
Yeah.
With WordPress in mind, so yeah.
So yes, so that means we now have 20 minutes. Does anyone have any favorite website with cat pictures or something on it? Yes.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm going to ask the question and you guys come back on. When I try to implement my plugins or so forth, like what I'm developing myself, I'm trying to implement kind of MVC standards and styles of coding, and I'm having a difficult time using kind of an MVC pattern to do my views and control my plugins. So my question is this is kind of like a standard format of what is the best way to format those base files so that your plugin almost acts like a framework that you can build and extend upon. And I'm finding difficulty with the hook system to do that effectively. Anybody have any suggestions on how to implement more like an OOP style with the MVC kind of aspect to it? Because that's what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah. What I found, I'm assuming when you say the hooks, you're talking about the built-in WordPress hooks. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I found when I was doing my plugin, or when I was revising my plugin from the first time, actually adding more hooks than one, was that it was more built for a functional programming rather than object-oriented or MVC type. And so I don't know if, or what's the term? Is it not functional? It's procedural, I think it is. Yeah, it's the term. That WordPress was built on a procedural format, and I don't know if there's any talk of that changing anytime soon. Because I think for what they do and how they do it, that works the best. So unfortunately, I don't really have any good advice to give for at least trying an MVC, which I think would actually be a better method, just simply because once I started doing MVC, it made a ton of sense to me. So does anyone else have any ideas on that?
It's not obvious, it's just procedure.
Yeah, no, WordPress is procedural, but wondering if anyone else has any advice on making plugins able to work in a sort of MVC framework, but I don't know. So unfortunately, I don't know. Don't know what to tell you. So, but thank you for helping me burn 3 minutes. So now we only have 17 more to go. So anyway, yeah, I guess that's honestly about all I have. So yeah, I was gonna say thank you.